Did we do a mic check?
Yeah, I did them while we were sitting around doing nothing.
Okay, so you heard me then.
Yeah, I can hear you just fine, and I can adjust on the fly anyway.
And then there's me.
Yeah, you're fine
Ooh,
too.
Kit Kats.
Ooh, Kit Kats.
Kit Kats.
This ad supports
Hi,
Twitch.
everybody. By the way, what's up?
I'm just.
And we're recording. Here we go.
And we're live recording.
The problem with those Kit Kats are
5, 4.
This is the Misdirected Mark Podcast, a podcast about gaming, game mastering, and entertaining you, our listeners. We are explicit, you have been warned, and I'd like to thank Mike Willard for letting us use his music on our show. Now let's pick up those mics and get on with this thing.
Before we get started, I would just like to point out that we are not really, but I wish we were sponsored by the lovely and majestic Tim Hortons Coffee.
Tim Hortons. If you're out there, look us up.
Trust us.
Okay, so that is the final tick and setup for the show. That'll trigger the start the show with one tick.
Hey, we're running late. You got to start the show now.
We actually are running late, but I can't. We still have 3 more ticks to start the show.
What are you talking about? Hit the stream button and let's get going.
Look, one tick and Chris is done with Phil being bossy, right? I just did that. One tick in there. That one's nearly full.
What?
We're doing this again? All right, I know what's going on. Chris, I just got back from the bathroom and passed my check with style, so put 3 ticks and start the show.
Oh, let me 1, 2, 3. And the clock is full, so here we go. And welcome to the 363rd episode. That's 363 ticks. That's a lot of ticks.
There's a lot of
Many ticks.
I mean, at 400, does the clock fill up? Then what happens?
I think at
wonder.
500 the clock
500
fills up, yeah.
the clock fills up. Of the Misdirected Mark podcast. Tonight we're going to break down the mechanics of clocks, how to use them in your games. But first, my name is Chris.
My name is Phil.
And I'm Old Man Logan.
I'm objecting to that clock you have of done with Phil being boss.
You wrote the copy. I just read it. You did it. You're objecting to yourself, essentially.
I just going with what I figured you already had.
I object.
Oh, man.
Right? This is good stuff.
Yes.
It's time for us to do one thing. So, Bob, tell us one thing.
Yeah, mortgages are a scam.
Yep. That's
Really?
right.
Mortgages
Is that
are a
your one
scam.
thing?
They suck. That's my thing.
I'm glad we started with you because that's really negative.
I'm just going to start down. We're going to build up.
I want to rant for a moment here.
We did the Tim Hortons ad. That's an upbeat.
Yep.
We did the joke in the beginning, which had a few upbeats and then a downbeat because of the Phil.
Had a little self-deprecating
Yeah,
humor.
Yes,
Yes,
then
always with
another
the
upbeat.
self-deprecating humor.
Yeah.
So I guess a downbeat is appropriate.
We have to have a downbeat. Yeah, scam, total scam. Just my escrow once again for a second consecutive year was not calculated properly, so they have to raise my mortgage rate for the next 12 months by $45 a month. Yeah, thank you.
By the way, home ownership is a scam.
Oh yeah,
Don't fall for it.
yeah, it
Home
sucks.
ownership, total scam.
Rent, it's easier.
I like renting my apartment. I love this apartment. It's great.
Yep.
We're gonna melt at some point, by the way. It's warm
Slowly.
outside, and we had the air conditioning on to cool this room off. But
Yeah.
I mean, it'll only probably last us for about 30 minutes.
I feel like as summer continues, we may have to reorganize the shape of the room
Mhm.
so that so the mics aren't behind the
Air conditioner.
air conditioner.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I feel like if we pivoted,
In reality, what we'll
Pivot.
probably do is keep those doors open and put the air conditioner in the other room.
also
that's an idea.
an idea.
Yeah, that way
Yeah.
we can just cool both rooms.
Yeah. Also good.
Can you dig it?
Yes,
Right,
we
so that's-
can.
That's my downbeat. Phil,
I'm
your one
I'm
thing?
building my own Shadowrun.
there you go.
So
What the? Huh? What?
No, I'm not making
Huh?
one from scratch.
Oh.
I'm building it from parts. The Sprawl released a supplement called Touched Prime, which is like all the magic stuff for the Sprawl. And since the Sprawl actually does Shadowrun better than Shadowrun, I was like, I'm just going to use the Shadowrun history instead of making up something for the Sprawl. Like I'm going to use the Shadowrun corpse and all that. So first thing I did was I threw a thing out on Twitter and somebody hooked me up with a podcast called the Neo-Anarchist podcast.
That seems very much within your wheelhouse of things you would want to listen to.
Well, so here's the cool thing. It's a person doing the history of Shadowrun, like year by year.
Oh my.
And they're 8-minute to 15-minute episodes. So I've just been like binging
And it's called the
Neo-Anarchist podcast.
Bob, would you like put that in the show notes or something? So I can put it in
I will pin
find
that.
a link.
Ding.
Yeah.
Well, I want to make sure I have a link to it in the show.
Yeah, I don't remember how old the podcast is. I could look it up on my catcher. But anyway, so I started. So it's basically it's all the history of Shadowrun that's like in the books. But you can just listen to this. You can listen to this guy Opti is his name, and he's a Shadowrunner, and he tells you the story, he's schooling you up on the history of the world. The Sixth World.
I love the Sixth World, by the way.
Yeah, me too. So the other thing I did was I went and checked my NAS. I was like, well, if I was going to play Shadowrun, do I have any Shadowrun books? As it turns out, I've been hoarding Shadowrun books.
Every one of them.
Yeah, so I pulled out the Sixth World Almanac, the 2072 Seattle guidebook. Like I pulled and an anthology of short stories. So I was like, yoink! I put those into my Dropbox from like my NAS over to my Dropbox, and I'm like, you know what? I am making my own Shadowrun.
So
now.
there was a dragon that was pretending to be Fuji Mountain, right?
No, not pretending to be Fuji Mountain. Like lived
inside of it.
Yeah,
Oh.
yeah.
This is my Fuji Mountain dragon voice.
Yeah, I forget what the name of that dragon is, but yeah. So anyway, I'm on board because I can now play the Sprawl, but I could now play Shadowrun the Sprawl, and that right there is worth everything. I can finally play the Shadowrun I've always wanted to play.
I just want everybody out there to realize that Phil is willing to play Cyberpunk with magic.
And I don't do that often, and I don't do that lightly, just to be clear.
Just throwing it out there.
Just being clear about that. Anyway, yeah, so I'm excited because I really did the Sprawl, but I can now play Shadowrun.
We're all adults. We can make choices, change our minds about things.
No, I like things like that. I mean, it's okay. That one's fine.
That one's fine?
It goes way back when I was younger and very impressionable.
Oh, okay.
I mean, here's the thing. I've never gotten to scratch that itch because every time I go to play Shadowrun, I get pissed off and like stop playing it.
So what is it about Shadowrun that is okay compared to everything else then? That has magic thrown in on the side?
I'm telling you, I think it's because I was like 18. All right, but here's the thing I don't like. You know where I get mad about this is when we talk about like detective stories and things like police procedurals. Because there are plenty of fantasy settings, right?
Sure.
Too many fantasy settings, to be honest.
I would agree with that.
Yeah, there could be a culling of fantasy settings, right? But there are pure cyberpunk games, right? Cyberpunk 2020. Now we have like the Veil, we have the Sprawl, and all that. So they're pure cyberpunk games. There is no pure police procedural game, right? So every time somebody tries to make one,
which, by the way, is pretty out there because there's tons of police procedural media everywhere.
So much.
It makes no sense that there's not any police procedural games.
It doesn't make sense in the least, right?
You know, I bet you're going to start seeing a few of them pop up because at least not role-playing games, but board games. I don't know if there's any really good police procedural board games out there. But there's those there's a bunch of Sherlock Holmes consulting detective type games.
Yeah, I mean, the original what is it? Was it 221 Bleecker Street?
Is that a thing?
Game?
Yeah, that's a game.
Yeah,
we were solving mysteries.
Yeah,
right?
221B Baker Street.
Yeah.
Bleecker Street is where Doctor Strange lives.
Yes, sorry. Yeah. Well, they're the same character.
Sherlock Strange,
same actor.
Sherlock Strange. I'm in.
Sherlock Strange.
You know what? Now that you say that,
that's actually pretty good.
I would read that comic book.
Me too.
Yeah. Anyway, so yeah, but Shadowrun has a huge nostalgia thing for me because I remember being a kid and I remember seeing the poster for the original cover and just like losing my shit about it, right? But then ultimately being disappointed by every version of Shadowrun ever, right?
I thought I fixed that. Sorry, keep going.
So ultimately disappointed that like my joke about it being like the bad ex-girlfriend is where that came from, right? Like it'll always promise you every edition it's going to be different, and then
never is,
and then you find all your stuff on the lawn like a week later.
Sorry, it just makes me laugh.
So anyway, so now I'm having a blast actually like relearning the history of the Sixth World. Like it's really two interesting stories. Like it is the peanut butter and chocolate. It's the peanut butter and chocolate phenomenon. So it's really a story about like it's a traditional cyberpunk story about, corporations becoming, their own nations and getting armies and fighting each other or whatever. And then mixed into that is this story about the return of magic to the world, right? Because this is the sixth age for this world. And, there's, if I remember correctly, the Shadowrun universe ties back to Earth Dawn.
Yeah, that's what I hear.
Right, because Earth Dawn's like the fourth or fifth age or something like that. Anyway, so it's really interesting, like how those two storylines weave into each other. And I just have always hated the system. No offense, Catalyst, but you guys love making that system over and over, but it's doing nothing for me.
Over
and over. So yeah, it's exciting. And
I want to play Shadow Sprawl.
Yeah, Shadow Sprawl is we're gonna remake. So we started playing the Sprawl. We played like one mission. I'm like, okay, guys, we're all remaking our characters because we're playing.
If I would have had Shadow Sprawl like 3 months ago, I would have run a long con of Shadow Sprawl at the QCC.
Right? Like, there's some badass stuff you could do with it. And like when I went and looked, like I have like no shortage of Shadowrun books. Like if I don't come up with my own ideas,
there are also no shortage of Shadowrun books. There's a lot of Shadowrun books out there.
Really like making supplements. Like they like making supplements like TSR liked making supplements.
Me?
Unto you, my friend, I'm going to take a sip of my coffee.
The QCC is like in like 2 weeks.
Yeah. It's time to play the music.
It's time to light the lights. It's time to roll the dice. The QCC tonight.
Boom. Yeah.
That's actually probably about as good as I could do with that.
Yeah, it's okay.
That wasn't that bad, actually. Compared to some of my attempts at stuff like that, I've crashed and burned quite badly. Anyways, the QCC is very, very soon. It's in like 2 weeks, which means when you all hear this, it's like in a week. So that means like the events are pretty much set. We have a lot of them. There's well over 200 events now going on. We had a slight room change. We lost a room, but we got a new room, which means there's like a little bit more gaming space, so I could shift some of the other games down there. So there's gonna be a little more space in the dining room in the evening, hopefully.
There was a little shifting in the schedules too.
So Saturday got messed up because I was like, oh look, the times in the convention on the main page are wrong. I should go fix that. So I went and fixed it. But when you fix it, it destroys
all the entries. Well, it didn't destroy the entries. It destroyed the time to all the entries.
Correct. Which means it shifted the entries around too.
Right.
So it put them all in the wrong time slots, especially on Saturday. I'm like, okay. Well, can I fix this? Yes, with about 10 hours of work.
Edit undo?
No, there was no edit undo. So I fixed everything. All the games are back where they properly belong.
Yes. I mean, the good part is like it didn't lose like who was registered or anything.
No,
it just like it just cut them loose, like they were floating
in the wrong spaces, in the wrong time slots. So I had to go put them all back in the right time slots.
Yeah. I don't even know if mine was floating the wrong time, so I just couldn't see it.
Well, no, I cleared out the entire schedule on Saturday.
That's what you did.
I removed every event on Saturday and rescheduled them all. Oh. But the intended times, so when you register, when you submit an event for the QCC, you put a preferred time and an alternate time.
Yeah.
Those all got changed too, which is why I was asking everybody when their events were, because I didn't actually know when the events were. So that's what happened.
Yeah. So good news is it's all fixed again.
Yeah, it's all fixed now. We're all good to go.
I'm all good to go.
I mean, we have a silent auction this year. So that's that. Hey, everybody, it's a silent auction. Yeah. So one of the biggest changes is so we have 3 rooms for games. 2 of them are fairly sizable. One of them is a smaller room that's not attached to the 2 main rooms. You have to actually go downstairs to get to it. The one room where the auctions and all the vendors are closes at 9 o'clock at night.
Okay.
The other room though is open until 3 o'clock in the morning.
Nice.
So people can game until 3 in the morning. And there are some games that are running till like 3 in the morning.
Oof. Are you running a midnight to?
I'm not running any role playing games
you from Origins.
I know what you're doing. I actually have a bunch of board games. We actually have a lot of board games in the schedule this year. People asked for it, so we went and got a whole bunch of board games in the schedule.
Well, I think that's cool.
Yeah, like Mo 2 Snow is coming to run some pretty fun stuff.
Yeah.
The tabletop bellhop. Some of the stuff that we got from Origins is going to be on there. Dan, I always forget how to pronounce his last name. Hyogen from DPH Games is going to be there running a bunch of his stuff, some new stuff, some old stuff. We got Bob's going to be running his board game block. Hopefully he'll get Bot Battle Bedlam or something new done.
2 weeks, baby.
I will have something ready to go.
2 weeks. That's what you call it. That's a lot. And you're recovered from whatever cold you had.
Yeah, I'm finally, for the first time in about a month, I'm healthy. Like, I had a gout flare-up, which was devastatingly bad for me. Like, I had a hard time walking around. And then while that happened, I hurt my back.
Yep.
So then I went to Origins, and for one day I felt okay, but my back was still kind of cranky. And then I caught a cold.
Everybody caught a cold.
Everybody caught a cold.
Not me.
Not you.
I don't know why not me.
Whatever. Take it.
Take it and run. I mean, I'm like the only person who made the saving throw. what you call it. I'm the only person who made the saving throw that time. Bob went down. Senda was sick. You got it. Schmitty got
Everyone
it.
got
Jerry
sick.
got it for the first
Yeah,
time.
Jerry-
and all the times
Jerry
he's
got
gone
it.
to.
Mo got it. Mo and
Mo and
Deanna
Deanna
got it.
got it.
Oof.
This is bad. This is very bad.
No, Ange did. All right. So Ange also escaped.
So that was rough. Like I like yesterday or 2 days ago. This Monday. Monday was the first day that I felt good, which was great because I mean I should just focus back on the QCC because we'll talk about other stuff.
Yeah.
later. Anyways, the QCC is coming. There's tons of events. You can still register. You can still get food stuff, and if you're coming, like the room stuff is still open until like a day before or 2 days before. Monica from Bonus Experience is coming.
Yay!
Ange will be there. We have
Yay.
we're going to be having a Thursday evening gathering.
Oh, are we?
Yes, there's a Thursday evening gathering. I know no one's heard about it yet because I keep waiting for the person or people that are in charge of it to get that done.
Okay.
So I don't have details, but there's going to be a Thursday evening gathering for all the guests and the VIPs. That was part of what the VIPs paid for.
All right, good. Well, I had a lot of fun with that last year.
Yeah,
so
me too. So
no pressure.
The goal is to get the same place that we had last year.
Ooh, that was a lot of fun last year.
And the same deal that we had last year.
Yeah, that was good.
So it's been a struggle this year. A bit of a struggle.
Well, this is. I mean, look, you changed the venue and all that. I mean, it's a lot. You changed the timing on it, which changed your cycle of how much time you had to actually get it completed. Like from a project management perspective, like it's a bit like that's a lot of change all at once.
It is a lot of change all at once. Anyways, it is months earlier too, so we had a shorter time cycle to get there.
Exactly.
It should be a good time. We have a lot of I feel like we have more different kinds of events this year than we normally have had. Like we don't have like miniature stuff, but like somebody submitted a bunch of like werewolf and 2 Room in a Boom games, which are fun party games.
Yeah, that's fine.
People like that. We have a LARP this year.
Ooh.
Misha is running a LARP. Well, that's full.
Sweet.
It's very full.
I had very I had very good luck. My my stuff. I think I have 1 slot open in 1 game right now.
Yeah, I mean, often these games, because this is our home con, the misdirected Mark Gem.
Not always in years past for me. Like sometimes I had to go recruit, but
that's fair.
I'm I mean, my first Hydra Hackers game is a whole Bridget's in it, but then I think so it's
we told Bridget to go play it because it's a heist game and she likes heist games.
Yeah, Blue Europa.
Yep,
it'll be fun.
Bridget, my roommate Bridget, Jen's sister Bridget. Okay, blah, blah. So that's the QCC. It's coming.
Yes.
Go buy stuff.
Yes.
Tell your friends about it too. That's what we really need. Tell your friends about it. We actually have sold a fair number of badges, which is great. Like, but we could always sell more.
It never hurts. The more people who show up just help it make it bigger and bigger.
And also like keep us from going bankrupt and things like that too.
By the way, do you hear the origin numbers? We'll talk about it after the main segment.
All right.
The official origin numbers are in for the year.
Oh, nice. I'm curious to hear what they were.
Yeah.
Let's do some announcement stuff.
Why
don't you tell me about Red Carnations on a Black Grave?
I just wanted to just keep it in people's minds. This is Cat Ramen's game about the Paris Commune of it's like the 18 somethings. It is a lovely tragic story game. I say it's lovely and tragic because I think Cat did a really good job of capturing this like little weird. I don't want to say weird, but this really unique piece of French history. And you play out what is essentially a doomed utopia. It's not really a utopia, and it's doomed from the start. And the question is, who's going to live, who's not, kind of thing. So anyway, it's a beautiful little game. It's up on Kickstarter. It's doing well, Bob. How well is it doing? While you look, I've been getting messages.
What are we looking for?
Red Carnations on a Black Grave. The big board, please.
Appreciate that.
Yeah. But anyway, I've been getting updates, so it's definitely clearing stretch goals. So it's getting, I think, more art. It's moving to an offset print run.
Okay, here we go.
And
all right, 22 days to go. It is at $12,085 of their goal of $3,000.
Yeah. That's really good.
That's really good.
It's a solid run.
274 backers.
Yep.
From what I saw,
numbers.
It's a game that uses cards too, right? And it's going to be in a box, or is it going to be what?
It has cards. It doesn't use it's a story game, so there's no hard like mechanics, but the cards have the story prompts on them, and the cards I believe have the characters.
Is that what we're calling them now? Hard mechanics and soft mechanics?
No, but I'm saying like there isn't like a task resolution system. There isn't like you're not collecting cards to play a thing to overcome a challenge.
The game is completely procedural.
Yeah, game's procedural and story based.
Mm-hmm. So be creative with inside this set of procedures.
Yep, exactly.
And historically interesting.
Yipper.
Do you want to do the next one?
I do. The character cache coloring book. So Matt
What?
Morrow's coloring book.
Hey, do you have kids? Do you like to color? Do you not have kids and like to color? Like
Yeah, seriously.
any of those things. Like you should go and check this thing out.
Yeah, we put together a book. It's so if you remember, we had a year or two ago, we had the character cache where we were monthly making various characters based on our Patreon backers. And what Matt always had when he was making them is he always had black and whites of all of those characters because he always had like before he finished coloring them. And what we've done, what Matt did first was Matt put really intricate backgrounds.
Yes.
For all of the characters. So he made these like really cool, contextual, interesting backgrounds per character.
And they're awesome.
Yeah. And so then John did the layout for it and put it together with like a little description of each character. And so there are 24 characters in the coloring book. You can get the coloring book for $7.95 PDF and $9.95 print on demand on drive-through.
It's pretty good.
Yeah,
that's actually really good.
Yeah, and it's it's great. Like if you want to just do individual pages, get the PDF, print one out, start coloring it. They're pretty neat. I'm psyched about it. Like it's fun. It was a fun project we've had on the side for a little bit, and we just didn't the timing. We'd gotten caught up in so much Kickstarter stuff that we hadn't launched it. So we kind of hit we didn't really hit a lull, but we got to a point where I was like, let's push the button on this thing. Let's make it happen. And you can actually go to the drive-through page and see some of the pages. Like we have,
and I have linked that in the chat room.
Thanks.
Very nice of you.
Yeah. So that's the Matt Morrow character cache coloring book. Go check it out.
Yes, absolutely. Go and check it out. All right. Let's talk about a game called Demigods. So this is a new role-playing game powered by the Apocalypse that brings forth the world of myth and legends to a modern setting. The presenting a fast-action epic take on mythology in the style of Good Omens, American Gods, or Percy Jackson, which I like all those things.
Right. Your character can be from any pantheon or belief system you can think of, taking on world-breaking legendary events while dealing with the mortal world and complicated relationships.
Cool. Demigods has a huge selection of playbooks allowing you to play out your myth in any way you want, creating a rich tapestry of gods and humans that will forever go down in legend.
Created by Jason Mills, a passionate storyteller and mythology buff, Demigods is coming to Kickstarter on July 9th.
So if you are listening now, that's next week. If you're listening when this comes out, it's that day.
Yes.
Isn't it? Oh, no, we're 2 weeks away. Sorry.
Yeah.
2 weeks away. So if you're listening to this now, it's a week later. Yeah, this is gearing you up. So because this comes out on the 2nd. So.
Yep.
Although I really need to talk to the leadership about changing the release date of Misdirected Mark to Wednesdays. I think that might be better. Anyways, if you want more information about Demigods and a preview of the game system and art, you can go to demigodspbta.com and follow Jason Mills on Twitter at It's Probably Okay. Check out happyjacksrpg.org for Demigods actual plays. I also know that Chris Gray is working on this game too with Jason.
Oh. So, nice. Okay.
I'm pretty sure that's accurate. I'm pretty sure Chris Gray is the one that brought this game to our attention. So there you go. Check it out. Should be pretty awesome.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I mean, who doesn't like little PBTA, basically, part-time
modern
gods.
Yeah. I'm down with that. I like it.
Yeah, I mean, me too. I mean, obviously it won't be part-time gods. It's a very different kind of flavor than this, I think.
I like the Percy Jackson, American Gods, Good Omens kind of thing.
Yeah.
Like, I could find some fun in there.
It's interesting to me because Good Omens and American Gods are like so very, very, very different.
Very different.
Yeah,
yes.
They're very different kinds of stories.
Yep.
American Gods and Percy Jackson, on the other hand, I mean, Percy Jackson, I guess, is very different too. So it's like, teenage, it's like Harry Potter with gods.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you've got the youngster angst kind of angle going.
I reread American Gods. I started reading it and it didn't click for me the first time I read it. And then I kind of got lukewarm on it. Like I should just go back and try it.
American Gods?
Yeah.
It's really good.
I know. I just didn't. I don't know where I was when I was reading it. It just it didn't click, and then I was like, and I just kind of put it down. So I should try again.
Okay.
Alrighty.
So let's move on to our main segment,
Mhm.
main topic, the thing that we're going to do. I'm going to hit that button, right? Ready?
Pushing the code.
You ready for the thing?
No,
Oh, it's the
pushing
garage.
code.
You're pushing
It's
that
the
code?
Access granted.
There you go. You got it. So
I knew I had to prompt you to which sound.
I'm glad you did because I was going to hit workshop.
I know. It would have been really awkward.
Workshop.
I just like listening to you yell. That's why. It's funny.
Don't suck.
It makes me laugh, right? I don't know what you want.
So just go do it around the office now.
Yeah. Tonight, we are revisiting an older topic, as well as one we touched on a bit ago, about 7 episodes ago, probably.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Ish.
We're going to talk about clocks. Tick-tock.
And you don't stop.
There you go.
Yeah.
Since the original episode we did on clocks was 197, that's a while ago,
It's like it didn't even exist.
Long time.
and predated our play of any Blades in the Dark games.
I mean, it's AB, so.
It is After Bob. We thought this would be a good time to revisit. By the way, what was that episode for After Bob, everybody in the chat room? Because Bob knows.
There you go.
Two
Guys, this
oh,
is
seven.
radio. You're holding up fingers.
We were doing it for the chat room. It was 162, 167, somewhere in there.
I thought it was 2.
I thought it was 7.
167, kids.
Yeah, I was right.
167.
So first thing we're going to do is review what a clock is and define some terms. So let me play that bumper real quick. Hold on. There's a bumper over here.
Play my damn.
Behold! You are in the presence of Definition Panda.
Can you feel the head swelling?
Oh my god, I love it. In fact, what did the show notes say?
Play my bumper.
Play my bumper.
I was waiting for it to say play my damn bumper, right?
Well, I wanted to be nice the first time.
I mean,
Jeez.
because get that McClure-esqueness in here. Play my damn song.
It's like
Or sing my
hang
damn
on,
song.
I'll do like the Neo. Like calm down, my head shrinks back in for a
The
second.
whole world shrinks back down.
Right. All right. Talking about how clocks work, right? The definition of a clock, right? Clocks are countdown, count up mechanics. We talk about the different ways clocks can fill, but they can do both. I think we're most familiar with them being a countdown,
Mhm.
but they can also be a count up kind of thing. They're designated to track the progression towards some event or goal, right? So a clock is of no interest if you don't know what it means when the clock is either full or empty. Through play, the clock can advance forward towards completion. In some cases, we'll talk about how clocks can advance backwards.
Yes.
Not all games that use clocks allow them to go in both directions, but many do. And then when a clock is eventually filled, the event or goal that's tied to it is achieved, realized, occurs, that kind of thing.
So I wonder, did the stress track from Fate come before the clock in Apocalypse World?
Ooh, gotta look at publication dates.
Yeah, because they're essentially the same thing from two different sides.
Kinda.
Because the way that stress tracks get used for a lot of things in Fate were as like countdown clocks.
Yes, but those all came later. If the original,
I thought that was in Spirit of the Century,
oh, that's possible.
which is why.
But a bunch of that got kind of ejected when Fate Core came along, because that's not a Fate Core thing.
No, but you know that's not the first version of Fate.
No.
Fate's an older game than Fate Core.
Yeah, Fate's yeah. Anyway,
Anyways,
so why don't we talk about
games that use them? Sure,
Absolutely.
why not? So we first introduced this mechanism when we talked about Apocalypse World, and we were talking about fronts.
yeah, that was actually our 197. We were talking about clocks and fronts.
Mm-hmm.
Because we didn't have a lot else to draw on at that point.
That's true. That was one of the few, like, it was early on, right?
Yeah.
Early days. That was like 4 years ago.
Yep, absolutely.
So with a front, what you need to do is pick a scarcity in Apocalypse World. That was a thing.
Yep.
You create 3 to 4 threats around that scarcity. You write a dark future for when that clock fills up, which is important because then
Yep.
you know what it's going to do when it finishes, and then you assign it a countdown. So that's, if you ever seen them, they're actually pretty slick. It's a circle with the cross in it, but there was also in the very last tick, there was another section off.
Yeah.
So the last fourth was 2/8 really.
Yep.
Before 9 o'clock, you would know that the thing is coming, but it could be preventable. So you
Yep.
could still stop it from happening. Then you could like assign clues to it, figure out what the triggers were and what the steps are to get there. Between 9 and 12, that thing was inevitable. Those are that last 2 ticks on the clock. Those last 2 fourth slices, right?
Exactly.
Yeah. there was still time to brace for the impact of what was going to happen with it, but you still had to figure out what signified that. Those are the questions you kind of asked yourself as you were building these things out. And then if it ever filled up, got to midnight, then the threat gets its full active expression, and you need to know what that is. And hopefully if you have your dark future, you know exactly what that is, and then terrible things happen.
Yeah. So that's a pretty standard clock.
Mm-hmm. That's the power. That is the Apocalypse World version of the clock.
Yeah.
As envisioned by Vincent Baker.
Yep. And then so many, and we're not going to go through them in different examples, but so many derivatives of that.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Okay. Then we can look at Forged in the Dark games, right? Because Forged in the Dark kind of takes clocks to a whole new space, right? And when you get into your first Forged in the Dark game, mine was Blades. There is like a chapter on here are all the clocks you can make in this game,
and all of them.
This had changed the idea of what a clock was from Apocalypse World to something completely different.
Yeah. So if the chat room's already saying like they're saying the word clock a lot, but wait, just wait. There's more.
Yeah, just wait. There's more.
All right. So in Forged in the Dark games, there are danger clocks, which represent a progressive danger, right? You're counting up to some dangerous event. There are racing clocks, 2 opposed clocks that are filling up to see which one fills up first, right? That's the way that you can do head-to-head competition.
It's true.
In a Forged in the Dark game. There are linked clocks where when one clock fills up, it triggers the next one. That goes back to our example in the opening of the show where the setting up the show clock filled and the start the show clock got to start. They were linked clocks.
Yes.
There are mission clocks for things that are time sensitive or have a window of opportunity.
That is true.
There are tug of war clocks. Those are clocks that can be filled and empty.
Mm-hmm.
You're supposed to say that is also true.
That is also true. Sorry. I missed the gag.
There are long-term project clocks. These are the things that you do during your downtime. They're still clocks, but you use them in a specific portion of the game.
This is the part where I say we're all standing up like a bunch of assholes
well, now we're all just standing
around. We're in a circle.
And then there's faction clocks, which represent the goals of a faction. And they get filled not directly through the mechanics of the game. They get filled as the GM in their campaign prep kind of looks through and decides, like, these things are going to advance.
Best example of that I can think of is Headspace.
For
the faction clocks, where the
so that you're crossing over systems. I'm talking about Forged in the Dark, but you're now talking
That's
about
true.
You're talking about an.
I am powered by the Apocalypse game.
But again, yes. Headspace did also have a faction clock.
I feel like that's where that came from.
It's entirely possible. Tell me about Chris. Tell me how in the ordered number system, the old sequence,
formerly known as sequence.
Yeah, tell me how you use clocks there.
So the only clock currently in the game right now are encounter event clocks. So this is a clock that fills up as ones are rolled for actions. So you build a dice pool of d6s and you roll, and if a 1 gets rolled, then you fill up a tick of the clock, and for every 1 that you roll, the clock gets filled up more. And you can have 4, 6, or 8 segment clocks depending how bad the thing that's going to happen is. And when the clock fills up, it triggers an action as defined by the event. These could be opposition actions, a change in the situation, or some other kind of event. I find it best, but not always necessary, to seed what could potentially happen as this clock fills up. So, like, if you are fighting the mecha, the Nazi in the mecha on the side of the mountain, and it's got like a lightning cannon that's charging up, like, every time somebody rolls a 1, you say, like, you can make a description of like more and more sparks are like,
it's starting to glow now.
Yeah, good to give the players some hint that some nasty thing is coming.
Not always necessary.
Not always, but sometimes
you can hide a clock sometimes.
Yeah,
I find that it's always better to, if you're going to hide a clock, I still like to put the clock on the table
and just not say what it is.
Yeah.
We're actually going to talk about that when we talk about how to implement clocks.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, we can definitely talk about that. That's interesting.
Tell me about how hydration in Hydra Hackers is like a clock.
Yeah. So in Hydra Hackers, you have a hydration meter which has 6 slots for your body. And when you perform certain moves in the game, there's a tag on certain moves that says sweat.
Sweat it out.
And when you sweat, you have to take away one of your hydration.
Mm-hmm.
And when that clock runs out, as in you run out of water, you can become dehydrated and die. But you can fill it up by using another move called drink water. which will transfer water back into your body and like raise the clock back up. So it's essentially a tug of war clock.
Yeah. Why don't you break this down? I'm going to go open up the door and see if I can't get a fan to pull some air into this
Okay,
room.
that's fine. I'll what you call it? I'll take it for here for a few minutes. All right. So breaking it down, a clock has the following components, right? There's some event or goal that the clock represents, right? So in this case, Carlos may discover that the books have been cooked, right? So somebody's messing with the books. Okay. Then a clock has some number of increments, often just called ticks, that represent how long it'll take until the clock fills up. The lower number clocks, so like 4 ticks, fill up faster than clocks, say, with 8 ticks, right? That makes sense.
Sure, logical.
Right, in Forge in the Dark games, clocks come in 3 sizes, right? They come in 4, a 6, and an 8 to represent a simple, medium, and hard. Okay. Clocks can be represented typically like in a circle, right? In the Apocalypse World clock is, a circle with the lines through it. But really, you can theme the clock to fit the game you're playing, right? Like in the Sprawl, it's not a round clock; it's digital.
Yeah.
So it's just a line, and the boxes are progressively bigger. So they get progressively smaller.
Yeah.
So the first box is like kind of wide, and then as you get closer to midnight, the boxes get tinier and tinier.
Ah, interesting.
Yeah. So it is essentially the Vincent Baker Apocalypse World clock, but rolled out because it's digital.
That's neat.
Yeah. So you can totally thematically, theme your clocks in a game.
Yep.
We're talking about increasing clocks now?
Yep.
Sure. So there are mechanisms for increasing clocks. These could be some kind of check. You could have that success, partial success, or failure situation that would increase a clock for a variety of reasons. Which
like a success is likely to increase a clock more than a partial success, and probably more than a failure, right? Like in that order.
It could be by GM fiat.
Yeah, that's
that is my least favorite reason.
And that's the faction clock, and because that one doesn't actually need a roll.
It's not really. So it's not. Of course, it's GM fiat, but it's not really GM fiat. It's really based on the story. It should be based on the fiction.
Well, so
and you have to make some calls in and around that.
Well, I'll tell you what I used to do, because I also don't like fiat. So the thing that I often did with the faction clocks was make fortune checks.
Ah.
So I would just do the fortune check, and if the fortune came out positive, like I would fill like 2 ticks, and if it came out like partial, I'd fill out like 1 tick or something like that.
The thing I always did was ask, so what's going on with the story that's going on, right? Like, did anybody offend anybody? Did anybody do anything? And then, of course, if there was stuff that was happening off screen, checks.
That's where I use the
checks are really useful.
That's where I use the fortune checks, was the off-screen ones, because it's like, well, I want this faction to come up, like. Here's what I would do. I would do the fortune checks. I would fill in the thing. And then at the beginning of the next game, I would basically like give the news, the Duskval news.
Oh, that's cool.
And so I would just make mention, like, there's a lot, like the red sashes are like, the red sashes seem to be increasing in numbers down by the docks, right? But what I had really done was I had ticked off some clock.
Check, yeah. I think my favorite thing about the Scum and Villainy implementation of that is that faction sheet.
Yeah.
It's not filled out at the beginning. It's blank. So you only start putting the factions on there that the player characters are interacting with.
Yeah, I think what Blades did was they gave you the full list, but they tell you in the rules, they're like, pick about 4 of these. They're like, you can't keep track of all of these. So in our campaign, I had like 4 of them that were interesting, and the rest, like, only if something happened story-wise would I pull 1 back in. But for the most part, I was really only focusing on 4. It's too much.
I actually really like a lot of the stuff that they do with the factions and Scum and Villainy, because it says that, but it has that full list, so it's kind of hard to parse in your head, like, which one of these do I use? Right. Like, they also say, like, once you have achieved faction 3 with one of the factions, that initiates the end game. Which I don't know if Blades does any of that, right? Like,
no, Blades doesn't. No, because Blades' end game is likely that you're going to burn out, and how much cash do you have when you burn out?
Yeah, right.
Right, like that's really the end game for Blades.
Mechanically on clocks also for mechanisms. You can also have a mechanism for decreasing the clock using any of that same stuff.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yep.
So you want to do a clock using Scum and Villainy?
I do.
All right. I'll use one from the game that we're playing.
Okay.
So during one of our downtimes, Jerry's character, he practices the way.
Jedi.
He's like, yeah. It's not a Jedi. It's not
Sure.
a Jedi.
It's not a Jedi.
It's sort of like a
Listen,
Jedi.
that game is the most thinly veiled. Just say Jedi. It's easier.
I mean, it's the most thinly veiled space opera.
The way, the Force.
I mean, so that's the thing. Like the way, though, like we're just so used to the Force being the nomenclature that we all tend to use.
Yeah.
But like quintessence,
It's
Yep.
the same thing,
that's
man.
the Force.
It's the same thing.
That's the way. Like the utilization, Altean magic is essentially the Force
I'm not disagreeing.
or the way. So now that I can point at Voltron, I'd be like, look, everybody, we don't just have to use the Force anymore. There are other things that we can point at when you want to do space
That
opera.
is totally fair.
Anyways, during one of those downtime actions, Jerry had how you have the encounters
Mhm.
in the downtime procedure. He rolled an alien encounter, so he's got this way parasite in his room that's doing something, and it started a clock.
Yeah.
Right? So nobody knows what it's doing, but there's like a 6-tick clock on there for this way parasite. Then they started a second clock themselves, starting to do research and discovering what the way creature is.
Yeah, that's great.
Yep. So now we have these two clocks that are sort of like a race, since it might be worth it to figure out what the creature is up to before it finishes its clock.
So if they complete their research, will you tell them what the clock is?
Well, I will tell them what the way creature is up to.
Yeah,
Or
yeah,
instead, I will tell
that's
them
what I mean.
about the way creature. So there's two options that I could go with on that one. Like once you finish that, like that could lead to another clock to take action against the way creature, or it could just lead to immediate action.
Oh, see, I was thinking like they just fill up that clock and then you tell them what the name of the other clock is, and then they're like, "Fuck, we have to go do something about that."
See, that'd be fun.
Yeah.
That might be what I do.
He's not going to say what he's going to do because I play in that game, so
Yeah.
he doesn't want to. He
But
doesn't
Yeah,
want to
I'm gonna
forecast.
sit here and be real quiet.
Right. So, but here's
Or
here's the beauty in the Forge in the Dark game is like this is exactly in a Forge in the Dark game. This is exactly how clocks get implemented, and what they're really good for is they're good for things that you don't want to have happen immediately. That you want, like, because we're going to talk about this in a second, but clocks are great for suspense,
Mhm.
right? So, and they give you a pace. They're their own pacing mechanic.
They do a couple of things actually.
Yeah, in fact, you want to we can kind of roll right into that.
Yeah, let's do that.
Right.
So
So clocks are actually, I had said two things, but I'm actually now going to add a third thing, right? Clocks track incremental progress towards a goal. So what they give us is they give us something to do besides a simple skill check.
yes.
Because if we look at, like, say something like Pathfinder, right? Pathfinder, we have a skill check,
Yes.
but we don't really have a way to look at something that's like multiple skill, like
I
that's
mean-
going to take a lot. Like
Hey everyone, here comes the groan. There was skill challenges in 4th edition D&D.
that's why I picked Pathfinder,
Yeah.
not 4th edition, because 4th edition had actually a mechanic that could kind of do this. But although it did it more, it's like in the same moment,
Mhm.
less like over time.
Yes.
So-
which that is an important thing to note, because that idea about tracking incremental progress towards a goal is scalable.
Yes. And this was the problem, like in Pathfinder, was like you could make let's say you were doing some sort of like arcane knowledge check, right?
Mm-hmm.
But you just made the check, and then you would say something like, okay, well, this check's going to take you like a week to research. Oh, you failed. Like,
It's over.
you rolled a 4.
You get
Like,
nothing.
You get nothing. Whereas what's really nice about incremental progress is that if we look at your Scum and Villainy example, week to week when you're playing, the team can sometimes make successes
Mhm.
and add to the clock, and sometimes they won't. But they didn't lose anything for it. They just lost progress.
Mhm.
And they just have to wait till the next week or whatever to...
And even better to me, a lot of times in a Blades in the Dark game, you pretty much always make some amount of progress. It's just how effective
What's it going
are
to
you?
cost? Yeah, and what does it cost you to get
Yeah,
there?
and actually, unless something radical happens and the GM decides to take a tick off the clock, you're not actually losing progress. You're just not making progress
Exactly.
if you don't get it.
Exactly. Okay, so
Yeah,
tracking...
except I can't stand when nothing happens.
I'm with you.
Yeah.
Right. So tracking incremental progress towards a goal. Yeah, to be honest, I would much rather give you one tick and then make you pay for that.
Which I'm pretty sure that's
Yeah.
how
I'm
Blades
pretty sure
works.
that's close.
Even
Okay.
when you fail, you still get that tick usually.
All right, so tracking incremental progress, that's a thing, right? Creating tension, because, like, for instance, this clock about what's this parasite doing hanging over the crew, like, game after game, it's creating tension.
Mm-hmm.
And it's doing it for you in a wonderful way where you don't have to do any more work other than the clock existing.
Yes.
Like, it's not a thing where you have to keep describing something every week. Like, you do.
You can.
You can, and you should, but
Because-
like the clock has done 90% of the work for you by
Yeah.
existing.
Plus, they're great because they're the visual reminders of what's happened previously.
Yeah.
Because tracking that stuff over the course of time is usually not the easiest thing.
Yep.
Clocks and clock sheets are really good reminders of that. They're visual reminders, and you have that phrase that usually can be a thing to do that. And that's like the 5th time I've hit my mic today.
A little bumpy.
Oh man.
That's like my favorite Blades. My favorite clock from my Blades campaign was Bazo is sick of your shit.
Yep.
That was a clock against
Bazo
Tony's
Baz
character.
is sick
Yeah.
of your shit.
Yeah. And it just slowly crept up. And I think the day
It's like a meta commentary on Toady.
the day it filled up, like Tony got rolled in the street by like Bazo's men. Like, just Bazo was like fucking done with him. He was
Done with you.
Yeah, just
Bring out
fucking
the
done with
crew.
you. Like, kick his ass. Like, yeah.
So we want to talk about tracking, how they work in tracking progress. We talked a little bit about it already. Like,
Yeah.
So like it
We're a
lets
little
you-
off script here.
Yeah,
but
it
that's
lets
okay.
you keep track of those complex objectives, and as far like we mentioned that, like it's a cool visual reminder, right? And you can see what's going on. It's extra useful when there are multiple things going on because then you have the visual reminders and you could see where everything goes. And then if it's a game about resource allocation, which a lot of Forged in the Dark games are, because you only have so many actions you can take during your downtime.
Mhm.
Then and you only have so much stress that you can spend before you're taken out too.
Yep.
So both in like momentary play and in extended play, I know those are not the right terms for that, but that's a good
Yeah.
descriptor for it. Then you can actually see all that stuff and you can decide where you want to allocate those resources.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because as much as I love me some story games, I love me some games too.
Yeah, I mean, I think what's cool with the use of clocks is that kind of like aspects, they are mechanical and narrative. Because they represent something narrative going on, right?
They do.
They represent a dramatic effort that's happening.
Oh,
But then they're mechanical because they have cool like you can turn you can fill it in and you can
and you can like make actions to like try to manipulate it.
yeah, and you can decide like as a group you have to start deciding like if you're on a job and you have like all right, so for instance, let's say you're doing a job in Scum and Villainy and you have like cut through the bulkhead. Right,
Mhm.
that's a clock, and then there's another clock that you drop on the table after somebody's action because that's a thing you can do.
Yep.
That is, alarms are going to sound. Right now, players have to start making very game decisions about: do we just blindly keep trying to cut through this door, or should somebody start hacking the alarm system before the alarm system clock fills
Or
and
do whatever they need to do to keep the alarm from going off.
Yeah,
in any way, shape, or
exactly.
form. Like it could be hacking, it could be
right. Well, they get to pick the approach.
Yeah, it could be breaking into the command center to take out all the guards there to turn it off.
Exactly. But suddenly, like it creates its own set of story
Mm-hmm.
and its own set of tension.
Mm-hmm.
It's super good. And to go back to it, it's also mechanically.
To use a space opera reference for people that might need a little bit more, it's like when they get tractor beamed into the Death Star and they're sitting around and Obi-Wan's got to go turn the tractor beam off and then they find out about the princess.
Yep.
Like there's a new clock on the table.
Somebody
right
just
there.
drops the clock on the table.
Oh,
Yep, absolutely.
There you go.
All right, so cool. It's a tool for tension because watching a clock fill up, as we've just been talking about, creates suspense in the game, right? Because if that clock, the alarms are going to go off, is into its, like 4th or 5th tick out of 6, tensions are starting to run high if you're trying to cut through that bulkhead.
mm-hmm.
So knowing how a clock fills up adds tension, and then it drives actions in the game.
It does. And then knowing how the clock empties, it pushes people towards playing that way. Like,
Mhm.
oh, even if it's risky, right?
Yep.
And strangely enough, I mean, I'm talking a lot about Forged in the Dark games right now, but Forged in the Dark games actually do a really good job of driving you to do risky, not good things because you get a lot of experience points and things for doing risky things.
They have a lot of risk mitigation as well because if you're even when you fail, you can burn stress and you can cut consequences and
Mhm.
things like that.
But you only get experience points when you take desperate actions.
Yes.
But you get them for other things too, but that's one of the primary ways to get experience points.
Yipper.
So that's clocks. Also, so in ordered number engine, like when there's a clock on the table, like you're like, do I really want to build that big of a dice pool?
Yeah, because you could be like, oh, I'm going to pull a whole bunch of extra dice out of the middle of the out of the team pool and roll them, but if I do, my probabilities of rolling more ones
is much higher.
Yes.
So there's like a thought process going on there.
Yep.
That is one of the reasons why it exists, that rule.
Yepper.
Aside from having another way for the game master to interact with the world, aside from just
I
rolling
mean,
the
there's a
dice to do
thing in
anything.
Hydra Hackers where you see, like, at different points in the game, like, you'll be gearing up to go do a job, and all of a sudden, like, 3 people at the table will be like, you know what, I better drink some water.
Yeah.
Like, I better hydrate up
See?
before we get started.
So you
We're
can
probably going to
access-
sweat soon. So.
Yeah, so you can access some of those sweat moves if you need them really badly.
Exactly. Without, which is really good because that's kind of the that's the economy of that game, is like to keep drinking water.
Where Gator just said, "How can I make this action desperate?" I've had that question asked
Sure.
to me so many
Right.
times. Like, I really want this to be desperate. I'm like, okay, let's make it desperate.
Here we go. Can you use worse tools? Can you hang yourself out over the edge while
Oh,
doing it?
That's funny. Is this Hydra Hackers or Dark Sun? I feel like they're sort of the same thing.
There's
There's
definitely
some
some
similarities.
overlap. I mean, the funny thing is, and I always tell players this when they sit down for the first time, but at a meta level,
Mhm.
you drink a lot of water when you play that game.
I bet.
Like, because all you're talking about is like water this, water that,
So-
sweat this, sweat that, and then like everybody is like pounding through water bottles.
So just keep drinking water.
You have to have like an extra bio
meta,
break
right?
in it.
Yeah.
Like there's an extra bio break in the middle of the game because people are like, I gotta pee. Like,
So we're getting
yeah.
to the break.
So all right. So that is the first half of our segment where we talked about the mechanical side of how clocks work and what they do. We're gonna check in with the chat room and find out what they have to say about clocks. Then we're gonna come back and we're gonna talk about leveraging clocks in games, potentially problems that they might be able to cause, and how we might want to use them in our designs, either current designs or future designs.
So Bob, anything in the chat room?
Yeah, there's stuff in the chat room, but we always go to the other thing first.
Yeah, but first, Chris,
Why-
you're going to tell
why
us
you
about another
gotta-
show on the
why you
Mr.
gotta
Mark
break the-
Network.
Because I wanted to break the thing. Because I do that. I like messing with you guys.
Because you're
Breaking my
not...
balls here.
Fine,
Breaking
fine,
my
fine.
balls. No,
So
no.
let me talk
no,
about
no.
the show
Blake
and then-
Ryan, Batman, asked the question. He said the show 24 had a clock with each scene change. Is this a good example of clock use or too much?
I don't know. I haven't seen it.
Oh, no. So,
Been a long
so
time.
24...
That's like a literal clock.
yeah, but 24 the TV show, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so was that a count up or count down? But essentially, you knew from the show it was one day, right? The show's one day, so there is this implied, like, this is the shit that's going to happen when
Yep.
we get to the end of this clock.
Yeah.
Is
Yeah,
the president going to
absolutely.
live or not?
I don't know if that's a good example for a role playing game because the whole point of that clock in 24 was to be like, here's our slice of an hour.
Right. I mean, I'll tell you, there's a, I think maybe Bob will remember this. There was an episode of MASH when I was a kid where they had to do a kidney transplant
Yep.
or something at the MASH hospital.
Mm-hmm.
And they put a clock, an analog clock, on the overlay on the bottom corner of the screen for the whole episode
Oof.
because there was only so much time they had to perform the operation before this person
Yeah,
died.
that's a clock.
And it built up tension.
Oh, yeah.
Like every time you came back from commercial, the clock was like further along, and yeah.
If I remember correctly, the thing from 24 was like, it was every episode was an hour of a day, but they would jump between different characters, so they sometimes rewound time.
Yeah, so you needed it as a reference point.
Yeah, it was a
Yeah.
reference point, but it didn't do a good job necessarily of building tension like we're talking about because it was just a reference point and not necessarily a pushing.
You say that, but I think when you get towards the latter half of the show and you're like, good Lord, how are they going to resolve this? There's
Yeah.
only an hour of story time left.
That
Yeah.
is that is a good push for the tension. Like,
Yeah.
good-
So I think there's probably a kind of curve to the
Mhm.
tension in 24. Like
That's probably a good way to put it.
yeah,
but that's
I would agree.
also true for a lot like that, and that's also the reason why the Vincent Baker clock in Apocalypse World is has that extra slice, right?
Mhm.
Because the last fourth is more tense.
Also until you can divert from the problem until that last fourth.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like once you get to that last fourth,
Now
like, it's gonna
you're
happen.
committed.
It's just how bad is it gonna be?
Yep.
Yeah. All right. And we had a comment from Ange. Her issue with clocks when they've been introduced in some older PBTA games was that they were kind of overwhelming in the way they were presented. They're actually really useful, but they were often described more complicated than they needed to be, which I can see because people hadn't really kind of gotten it down quite yet, maybe.
Yeah, I mean
for how to
the dungeon world front system is not like the most elegant. It's not the most elegant system. It's literally, I mean, it's in the second generation of PBTA games, right? So like it doesn't have the benefit of like every other game that came out after it.
Mhm.
It was functional, but it was like probably way more than maybe it needed to be.
Sure.
I actually
Everything about that game is stylized and way more than it needs to be.
Yeah. I do think, like, I think those early ones, like when you look at the I would love somebody to do this, is to make a graphic where you put a bullseye and you put Apocalypse World 1, right? And then you create a ring, and then you put down the dots for all of the
I
games
could have swore somebody did that.
that were because there were a whole bunch of games that were built off of the playtest documents from Apocalypse World.
Oh, that'd be interesting to see.
And then,
Yeah.
like, so you could, because there's like some generations of
Mhm.
Apocalypse World games,
Yeah, I would like
and-
to see that.
and
too.
they take advantage of the fact that like other games have evolved some of these things. So like, yeah, I think Clock's got a lot smarter, or I should say more elegant, not smarter. I think Clock's got more elegant in
or the
later.
explanations got better.
Yeah. I mean, Dungeon World, I don't like. It's functional. You can totally use the front system, but I think even you simplified the fronts after a while. Like I don't think
For Dungeon World?
I don't think you played them orthodox.
Because
right?
the reality of the front system wasn't that it was a countdown clock. It was like, here's a list of stuff that's going to happen. Pick the ones that make the most sense.
Right, the signs and portents.
That was
and,
actually the design of it.
Yeah.
Like it wasn't a checklist of going down. It was like, here's a checklist of stuff that's going to happen. And if nobody deals with the stuff that's going to happen,
Here's
then
what's
it
gonna happen.
happens.
yeah.
Leading up to like, it's sort of like a Scrum project. Once all of these things happen, this thing happens.
Yeah.
And sometimes you had to have chains to get to the deeper ones, but most of the time you didn't.
Yeah.
You just played out the story. It was just a bunch of reference documents. If you actually listen to Jason Cordova, he actually says the same thing on Discern Realities, which I was like, yeah, that's right. Like, I mean, I think I said it like 4 years ago too.
Yeah, and Victor Wyatt saying that the Apocalypse World clock idea was based on the DEF CON
Yeah,
countdown.
which is cool.
Tension between the two nations. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, you all say cool now, but I think
Yeah. Back then it wasn't.
back
quite
then
that
it
cool.
wasn't cool.
I mean, it's cool now because I can be like, yeah, it's a historical moment,
Yes.
right?
Yeah.
Like,
But like I remember as a kid, like watching what was it, War Games.
Is today the day we're all gonna die?
I'm telling you, every time there was a special bulletin on the news,
Oh man,
I would be like, oh, this is it.
that used to get a little tense sometimes.
Well, and for me, like, so I lived like less than an hour out from New York City, so I always just assumed I'll be gone. Like I'm less than 60 miles out from New York City. When that bomb lands,
you're dead.
I'll just be dead.
Yeah,
We
It's
figured
not
the
much-
same thing here for
Yeah,
most of
Niagara
us.
Falls.
Niagara
Exactly, yeah.
Falls. They're going to take out the power generation.
Yeah, it's just pretty
So,
much over.
yeah.
The Cold War.
Yes. All right, Chris. Why don't you tell us about another show on the network?
So this is a show. It's called The Lounge. I mean, that's where Doc Palindrome, Jesse Edmonds.
I hear it's really cool.
It's very cool. They
Hey,
have
you were on it.
wonderful
recently.
music.
I'm going to be on it.
Yeah.
I mean, you were on it, and that will be.
It was
in the
recorded.
feed. Yeah,
it has not been
recorded.
released yet.
Yeah.
Yes.
But Doc, he finds the best, the brightest, and the most fun game designers out there. He likes to sit down with them, have these interesting conversations, and you never really know where that conversation is going to go. In fact, Phil and Doc talked about X-Men for like 30 minutes. If I remember
These
correctly.
comic books, man. We just totally nerded out. It's really funny because now that I'm reading newer comic books, I'm like, wow, these are. I mean, not Claremont. Claremont's great, but the rest of them weren't as good.
Well, I mean, Claremont is Claremont. Like, he basically ran the X-Men from 75 or 6 till like the
90 something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Those are my X-Men.
Yep.
The Claremont X-Men.
Mhm.
Those are my X-Men.
You mean Jean Grey is the Dark Phoenix?
The good way, not the movie way.
Any of the movie ways?
Any of the movie ways.
Twice.
It's a shame because if your only exposure to the X-Men and the Dark Phoenix are from the movies, like you are truly missing out on the comic book. Like the comic book was like heartbreakingly.
It was. There was a lot. But there was a lot of build up to it. So you had investment in characters.
There was
and
great build up, and it was tragic, and the ending. 137 is such an amazing comic book in terms of story beats. Like I can't even just so much. So we're back.
Oh,
right?
okay.
Yeah,
doing the
it's fine.
thing.
The clock filled up for...
The clock filled up for the break, and now we must return to the show.
Well
Welcome
played.
back. So we're going to talk about using clocks in play as well as designing them. And I'll just kick it off with the first question. What are some good ways of using clocks in games?
They're a wonderful visual references for things that are happening, so players can just look down and see it instead of having to remember it in their head. Anything you can sort of offload from the realm of thought that you have to kind of remember all the time to something that everyone can see. It also helps the game master not forget that it's there.
I agree.
Yeah, that is one.
Mm-hmm.
I will come up with others if Phil doesn't have one.
No,
I don't want to steal them all.
No, I think it's good. I think my favorite thing about clocks is I love incremental progress. So I don't want an alarm. To me, it's not interesting in the game for the alarm to go off. It's more interesting for me in the game for the alarm to about to go off and watch the players try to figure out what to do. It's actually why
clocks are amazing soft moves.
Yes, thank you, because I was just about to say soft moves. Soft moves are my favorite thing in PBTA games. I actually learned that from you, right? Like I learned to enjoy soft moves way more than hard moves. Anytime that I can be like, oh, there's a light blinking and there's a countdown going and the alarm's probably going to go off when that countdown reaches 0, and then drop a clock on the table with 4 ticks and just says, alarm. That's way more interesting than just being like, and the alarm goes off, right? Because if the alarm goes off, the players are going to take some action. Mm-hmm. But if I put this clock down on the table, then they're now they have to make a decision.
Yeah.
Like stick with the objective or try to defuse this clock or split their resources to do it. Whatever it is, it's going to be interesting.
It's probably do both because it's
almost always do. Well, no, sometimes like if you're down to one, like if you're 1 tick away from cutting through the bulkhead,
then you just cut through the bulkhead
and you're like, fuck it, we can
go
get
fast.
this.
Go fast.
We'll just do it desperate.
Yeah.
Like, hey, can I quick tweak the torch to burn hotter to see if we can't push it through in this next turn?
Sure, go ahead.
Yeah, you can. Yeah, you can. By all means, turn that torch up.
I mean, you might spike the heat sensors in the place and set that alarm off faster.
Burn yourself something.
Yeah.
Yeah. I tried real hard to think of this because Phil put in the show notes from the player perspective. Mm-hmm. So I was trying to come up with something that was kind of strictly from the player side. But really, all the stuff that we've been talking about works just as well from the player side.
Mm-hmm. I mean, the big one from the player side is personal project clocks.
Yeah.
That's like my favorite thing about clocks in the game because I'm like, oh, yeah, you want to do a thing? Well, you can't do that in like 5 seconds, but let's make a project clock for you. Now you have this project clock for yourself. Manage it.
Yeah, it gives you a way better representation of it than just periodically remembering to make another check and just trying to keep track of it yourself. You've got that physical.
I will say one of the things I loved about the personal project clocks as a GM
mm-hmm.
was I didn't have to have any answers.
Yeah.
Right? Like, so Bob one day in Blades was like, I'm starting a clock to find out where my mother's soul is. And I'm like, great, because I don't have a clue where his mom's soul is.
I have zero answer for that.
Right.
I don't feel like making it up right now.
Right. So
that's right. Yeah, it was actually. I said I need to make a clock. I'm doing a project, and he's like, "What is the project?" I said, "I'm going to find all of the hulls in Duskfall. I want to find out how many hulls there are and where each one is, because somewhere
one of them is
one of them's got my mom in it."
Right. So I was like, great. I don't know anything about what I'm going to do with his mom for the longest time. So I was like, it's a 6 or an 8 tick clock or something.
Yeah.
And then I didn't have to answer that question
until it got close to being
sessions,
filled up.
right? Like once he got like to 3/4 of the clock, I was like, the next time I was prepping the campaign, I'm like, you know what I should probably figure out is like, here's what I should do.
Also, you could update him and figure out like little 1 sentence or 2 sentence updates when he got to certain points in the clock.
Uh-huh. Yeah. I mean, in that one, it was very easy because it was like, well, you discovered a few more hulls, right? Like, and they're here, and here.
Mm-hmm.
Like, that's fine. But yeah, so I mean, I think it's, one, I also think it's really neat because clocks are, in a way, a bit of love lettering.
They are.
Right?
That's absolutely true.
By the way, Bob, can you just throw in the show notes? Because I think we're just going to do it next week as a show love letter. Oh, no, not next week. We have a special guest next week.
Hey everybody, Rich Rogers is going to be on
in
the show
2
next
weeks, I think we're going to do love lettering
week. Okay,
to talk, because we use that term a lot, and
Ding.
we could unpack it into a whole.
sure, I'm down.
Yeah, so I think like the cool part is like when you create that project clock, you're writing a love letter to the GM for something you want to have happen in the game.
Really, project clocking is the implementation of love lettering.
Yeah, it's the
That's what it
mechanical
is.
implementation of love letter.
Yep.
Yeah, it's one of the mechanical implementations you can use for love lettering.
Yeah.
I won't say it's the only one. I'm sure there's others.
I'm sure there's others. But what I like about it is once, like you said, it's incremental.
Mhm.
So I'm not giving you this thing right away. I'm going to give you this thing later. Like maybe you want to build a cool jump drive,
Mhm.
right? That the game's never seen before.
Mhm.
Well, we can have a couple clocks build our way up to that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Discover
Those are
some-
linked clocks or project clocks.
Yeah, like first make a scientific discovery about how this new jump technology will work. Build some plans, get some parts, build a prototype.
Yeah.
Like
It's all, and if you don't want to do it in multiple clocks, you can do it as like a tick for each one of those things
Absolutely.
too. And then you have that list. That can be the story parts of that.
Mhm.
Like there's a number of ways.
Yeah.
Clocks are very, very versatile these days. Like they're very different depending on the game that you're using. But all of these things that we're talking about actually exist in Fate these days too. They just usually call them stress tracks.
yeah, you can.
I think clocks is a better term.
A
for
stress
it.
track is a linear clock.
I mean, it is in a lot of ways a
Yeah.
linear clock.
Yeah, I wish they wouldn't even call them stress though. Like they get their name from the original stress tracks. But,
Yeah.
like they're just progress clocks. Like that's
Yeah.
Or progress tracks.
A track would be fine. Like just call it a progress track and don't. The reason I say stress is because stress starts to have certain mechanical implement.
Stress has certain,
Implications.
Thank
yeah.
you.
Stress has certain mental
yeah.
implications, right? Like
Yeah.
you think of certain things with stress. I always thought it was weird, but I got what it was doing.
Oh, I
so-
totally got what it was doing, but I think you could just call them
Yeah,
tracks.
I figured you did too. I just like
Yep.
anybody who's reading that game for the first time, like, wait a minute. I can fill up a stress track to take somebody out, but I can fill up a stress track to finish a thing, like to complete a project or to complete a.
How am I
part?
stressing out my project to build this thing?
Exactly.
I don't know, it's
Yeah.
just
In that respect, it didn't make sense. But the idea of capturing incremental progress
Mhm.
on something, I think is really cool because it just adds that depth to skill checks that a pass fail system just doesn't really encompass by itself.
Well, clocks also do a really good job of creating scope.
Yeah, because I can also tell you, like, if your scope is really big, I'm gonna put a lot of ticks in your clock.
Also, if you're using clocks as your measure for how powerful opponents are in moments and like an individual in those momentary scenes, those combat scenes or those conflict scenes, then like an 8 stress clock for a single enemy means that enemy's got a lot going on.
Yeah, and I mean an 8 tick clock.
8 tick clock. Thank you.
8
Sorry.
tick clock on an enemy is a lot of work.
Yeah, they are villains generally, or
Yep.
something really difficult to deal with.
But something even another thing you can do is you can then take a group of mooks and turn a group of mooks into a 4 tick clock,
Mhm.
because now I don't have to have individual clocks for the rest of them. They're a 4 tick problem in the scene.
What it does too, which is kind of cool, and I think a lot of people have a problem with this when they're playing the game, which is might be a mental thing. So like, say you're fighting an opponent that has an 8 tick clock, and you wildly succeed, you're only going to deal 3 ticks to them usually in most games, and even in other games, like even in sequence, it's hard to do more than 3 or 4 if you're going to use I don't usually use clocks for that, but I have consequences, the same deal.
Yeah.
You can't just take them out in one hit. It's a narrative constraint.
Correct.
So that's another thing that they do.
And 3 ticks is the best you can do.
Yes, and it's a big hit.
Right, which means, in Blade's terminology, that is what is it? That's the most effective. It could be super risky.
Yep.
But it's going to be so narratively you have had to have described the most effective attack.
But it can't take them out because you haven't filled up the clock yet.
Exactly.
Yep.
So it's a thing to think about, and it's a thing that you have to kind of work at sometimes, because even in D&D, like, even if you crit somebody, it feels awesome. But if they just started fighting them, they still have
all of their hit points.
7/10 of their hit points left.
Yeah. There's a thing that I think they say in Blades is you only create a clock for something that you can't do in one roll.
Yeah.
So if conceivably killing the mob boss with a sniper rifle is a one shot, one kill thing.
Mm-hmm.
You can just do it as a single roll. Like, you're not required in Blades to create a clock for the bad
As a matter
guy.
of fact, I think my Blades character could do that.
Yeah. So there's a case where you could be like, okay, well, at this distance, like, if you hit this guy, yeah, it's going to kill him. Make a single roll.
Yeah, because narrative, whatever the narrative,
Because the
positioning
narrative
is.
positioning of it. But if you get in close with them, like, and again, like you're saying, if they're just so tough they can't be dropped by any one attack, then having even a 4-tick clock,
Yep,
pretty much guarantees that they'll make it for one turn.
correct.
Yeah. Cool.
So, what are problems that clocks can cause? I mean, I was actually going there a little bit with that. Like, one of the problems is like you can have some dissonance with well, I rolled really well, but I only did X amount of
ticks.
Yeah, that also functions in other things too. So,
I you know, the only one I thought, because I am generally like pro clock, like I really like clocks. So the one I thought of, like, if you get a lot of clocks going on the table, kind of like when you get too many aspects on a table.
yeah,
Like, if you get too many clocks going, you are all over the place.
yeah, there's just too much stuff.
And
It's a lot to handle.
you'll start creating analysis paralysis in the characters, because if they're trying to pick their next action and they're trying to track all these clocks, it can create analysis paralysis. The other thing it can do is, if you have that many clocks out, you're diluting where you can put your effects.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so if I have like the alarm's going to go off and the cameras are going to see you, and the guard patrol's walking by, and there's a janitor coming down the hallway, like, and I just keep putting those clocks out, like, now, like, when I get a couple ticks, like, you know, how do I fill any one of these up, right? It's just going to take longer. So, you know, that's where you learn the finer art of condensing all of those clocks to you get seen. Right? Not like, it's not, you don't make it that specific if you don't need to.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
What about you, Bob?
Yeah, so depending on playstyles and player preferences, sometimes clocks can delay action or gratification. I mean, you're like, I want to do the thing. And it's like, but you can't do the thing until you fill the clock. And you're like, I just want to do the thing. You know?
Too bad. Do the thing
So yeah,
better.
I mean,
I'm just kidding.
suck it up. No, it's but you know, some people.
At least on the bright side, most of the time you can be like, so what is your reasoning that you feel like you should be able to do this thing now instead of, you know, in 4 ticks?
Sure.
Well, I think the one that's a little more insidious is like, if you I know it's in the Blades chapter. I don't know if they did it in the if they did it in Scum and Villainy chapter, but when they talk about like creating a new object in the game, like, it's not even delayed gratification as in like you have to make a clock. Their example is like, well, first you have to make a clock to do this thing. Then you got to make a clock, like downtime clock. So we're talking about like, you know,
yes,
downtime, like each downtime action, right? So they're like, oh, if you want to make a new thing, it's like 5 clocks to make it. And it's like, oh my, like, if 5 4-tick clocks, yeah, like that's like a campaign before you see.
Yeah, that's like, what?
Right. So like, yes, there is a point where if you don't balance,
Yeah.
and this is where I think a GM in a Forge in the Dark game has to figure out, like, how many downtimes am I getting per session?
Yes.
Right. So if I'm getting a downtime per session, that's different than I'm getting a downtime every 1.5 sessions, or I'm getting 2 downtimes a session, because I've seen people do that in one shots. So you have to know that you have to know the speed at which you're getting into the downtime actions in order to know how in order to calibrate those clocks so that you're delaying it, but you're not making it a campaign arc.
Yeah. So let's talk about that for a second. I mean, we can talk about other games too that do this, but we're talking about Forge in the Dark. I find that in about 2 hours, I can usually get through a job and most of a downtime, or the entirety of a downtime session. So like if you're playing for about 4 hours, you can probably do cycle it. And I'm not like rushing or anything like that either. I'm just playing.
Well, and I will say that this is also a function of how well you create the clocks for the mission.
That's true.
Right? Because if you put a whole shit ton of clocks into the mission, then it takes longer. But if your missions are a little more, like, if your missions are tight, and your clocks are focused, then I think, because I've seen this when people run 4-hour Blade sessions, you can usually get 2 jobs, 2 jobs, 2 downtimes. Is
It just seems to be the feel that I've gotten from it. From the games that we've played, the games that I've seen, and the games that I've run.
yeah, what slows me down in Blades is I also do the free time. So if I do a free time in between, then I can't do 2 jobs in 1 hour. Like if I blow through the free time, I could probably do it. But when I do the free time and sit down now, I'm like having characters talk to relatives and things like that. Like then, things slow down a bit.
Yeah, I don't know how much. We don't really do a ton of free time.
Yeah, see, I did the traditional
because they're on a ship together.
Yeah.
So where are they going to go free time? They usually just are hanging out on a ship together, right, Bob?
Well, I think you mean free play, don't you?
Yeah,
Phil?
free play.
Yeah, where you're just doing some in character interactions.
Yeah.
I mean, that doesn't necessarily mean that they have to go somewhere and we can do free play on the ship. But the other thing, we have the constraint that we're only playing for
2 hours.
2 hours on a weeknight.
That's a very tight.
We tend to get to the monkey.
Uh-huh.
Well, and for my Sunday evening group, so the one with Bob and Tony and stuff like that, I was very comfortable letting that one have, and I do it in masks too. I give it a fairly healthy dose of free time in both of those games because the character interactions are super interesting.
Yeah.
So I just let those breathe.
Yeah, in masks, those things actually create stuff too, because that's how you remove conditions, is how those characters can interact with each other.
Can I tell you a quick mask story?
Sure.
So Bob's character was Bob's public. Bob has public ID. A public identity.
I'm a legacy who's open.
Right. So everybody knows in school Bob's a superhero.
Okay, then.
And
Yeah.
so the Grey Guardians stopped the juiced up baseball team.
Uh-huh.
And so the baseball team lost their, they had to forfeit their season.
Sure.
Their only undefeated season ever.
Mm-hmm.
So Bob's not well liked at the school.
Really? Who knew?
Right. Well, no one will mess with him because they actually saw him kick, everybody's ass.
Yeah.
But they go to the end of the year music festival and it gets attacked and Bob keeps rolling 6 minuses.
Oh no.
And at one point he tases the school DJ. And so
Lit him up.
he goes to tase the bad guy who's holding the school DJ and it hits the DJ and everybody else who's holding up their cameras filming this starts to boo at Bob. So he's got some popularity problems coming up.
Really?
Yeah.
Who knew?
If I had a clock, this would be the,
Yeah.
Which that game doesn't have clocks.
No, it could have clocks. It would be
could,
a lot of,
yeah.
it would actually, there'd be some things where it'd be a lot of fun to have those clocks because I would stick clocks all over personal lives, like school life, personal life stuff.
Yeah, but that's a game that doesn't actually utilize that
It doesn't need
mechanism.
it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it doesn't really do anything for it.
No, I mean,
But I would love things like, you need to fill up this clock in order to pass your exam.
are there any
When are you going to study?
are there any modern day PBTA games that actually do utilize clocks? Does the Sprawl use clocks?
Oh, the Sprawl uses lots of clocks.
So how?
So the Sprawl has Sprawl is very mission based,
Uh-huh.
and it has 2 primary phases of play. So it has the legwork phase where you're gathering intel and all that,
Yep.
and then it has the action phase.
Sure.
And there is a clock in both of those. So during the intel phase, as you are doing stuff, moves will tell you increase the lookout clock by 1 tick.
Because something
You're-
the more
You're making noise.
Yeah.
Yeah. And they also tell you when you're designing the mission to assign things to each layer of the clock. Like security becomes alerted, that people are poking or looking for intel.
It's the heat track.
Yes. And then there's an action clock. So what happens is if you fill up the as you fill up the legwork clock, it just starts putting ticks onto the action one. If the action one fills up, the mission's a failure. And you don't play out the failure, you just narrate whether you lived, you were captured, or you died.
Interesting.
And if you all choose to live, then the GM increases one of the corporate clocks because the corporation's pissed.
Oh, I
Right?
like it.
But if one of you is captured or dies, you don't increase the corporate clock because they're satisfied, like they got something out of it.
Yeah.
Now, at the end, when you go to get paid,
Blood money.
when you go to get paid, you roll. There's a move called when you get paid, and you roll plus the number of empty ticks in the lookout clock.
Interesting.
So
Yes.
the quieter you were setting up the job, the better chance you will get paid in full.
Interesting.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's
It's clever.
I am telling you, like Hamish took everything that was awful about Shadowrun and codified it into a set of PBTA moves that it's just.
I need to play this game.
It plays.
I need to play this game. I need to run this game.
Oh, it plays running like shadow running better than Shadowrun.
Yep,
hands down. But
yeah,
just don't go get 6th edition Shadowrun. Just go get the Sprawl
and then the
magic
and go get the magic one.
What's the magic one called?
Touched Prime.
Touched Prime.
Mm-hmm.
So Victor in the chat room said that the PBTA game Mashed uses lots of clocks for the surgery, and they're push-pull clocks.
Mm-hmm.
So your patients have an overall health clock, and then each injury has a clock. So you can choose to save a life but lose a limb.
Oh.
I want to run that game at some point because I love MASH, and I would love to run that for.
So the reason I asked that question is we talked a ton about Blades in the Dark, but I wanted to talk about some Power.
No, I'm glad you did. Stuff. I'm glad you did. And Victor's right. Mashed is a
and I want to note, like, just those designs right there, those different designs right there, show the high versatility of clocks as a design mechanism in games.
Oh, can I just answer this for Meeps and Peeps really
quick?
Sure,
go ahead.
Mashed is a Powered by the Apocalypse game that is about the TV show MASH. So you play Korean War frontline doctors who are patching up wounded like during the war. It's MASH. Like there's no mistaking it. They just couldn't get an IP. Mark Clemens who wrote Corporea and the Western game. What's the really cumbersome Western
Aces
game?
And Eights.
Thank you, Aces and Eights. Wrote this PBTA game, and it's awesome. It is probably one of the least played PBTA games. I don't see too many people ever play it,
which is interesting.
I'm fascinated by it, but I've had a lot of trouble trying to find enough players to actually play like a 3-arc, like a 3-session.
And honestly, I bet you could bend it a little bit to do other medical.
Oh, totally.
Other than just MASH.
Oh, I'm sure you could do like ER.
Sure, you could do
Except
ER.
there's an ER game. There's going to be an ER style game out
there. Well,
there.
there's the Ward, but the Ward is like more drama than like this thing is like very much like they have like wounded cards like that tell you like put wounds on these body parts.
Oh geez, Phil would love that.
What's that?
Meeps and Peeps asked, "Is there a West Wing PBTA game?"
Not yet.
My love for West Wing knows no bounds.
I feel like there's a West Wing set for Hillfolk or drama system. I'm pretty sure there's one of those because that's pretty much what that show is, right?
My God, it is. It is absolutely petition grant. West Wing, man.
I know you love the West Wing.
Love it. I love it even more.
Do we have any other ideas for designs for clocks? Because I mean, the reason I brought that up is because I wanted to show some other ways that clocks get used. I mean, I don't have any design mechanisms around clocks that I haven't already seen out in the world.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I don't think I have anything revolutionary. Like,
I don't have
like
anything.
As in like I've built a different type of clock.
Yeah.
But I, am utterly well. I will tell you that the police procedural game that I keep messing around with has tracks, which are essentially clocks.
Yeah.
And one of them is the cold track, which is how long until the case goes cold and you can't investigate it anymore. And that is a clock that fills up as you take more and more time in the game. And I'm kind of working on a mechanism for how when you've taken time, and it has to do with moves. Like certain moves take a long time to your investigation move or whatever.
Yeah.
So
like when you need to go get that blood sample or whatever.
Right. But so the rule is every one character gets one of those moves before the cold clock advances, but you can only take one of those at a time. So like if you take your investigation one, you can have some other scenes like drama scenes, but you can't take another investigation scene unless everybody either forfeits theirs and lets time advance or everybody takes one.
Because that simulates everybody acting.
Yeah, it simulates everybody like Simon, like, okay, you two are going to go, scour the neighborhood for witnesses. And I want you two to go down and talk to the coroner and find out what's going on with the, with our Vic, and all of that. So like those roles all get made and then time advances. So
makes sense.
Yeah. I think the clever thing about that, it's not really a clever thing about the clock. It's kind of maybe clever about the implementation is that if your case goes cold or certain moves, when you have pick lists for some of the moves. We talked about the possibility of having you get information on a cold case. So if your cold case fills up and all of a sudden your current case goes cold and something else has a new piece of evidence, you can then reopen old cases and move around that way.
See, that's cool.
In fact, you have to, because for a campaign, you're going to have multiple cases open at once.
And you'll probably have a meta story going on.
You'll have a meta story, and then you'll have a cold case file where you actually have cases that you couldn't advance.
It'd be interesting to have a campaign setting, like book whatever of cases, where like you can have multiple cases in this like file that you get, like, and you distribute them as you go along. But like you can't actually solve the meta case big one. Like this doesn't open until you've solved
X number or these cases.
And of course, oh man, you can make it like a legacy type thing too, where like, well, you solve this case, you can now open up this case file.
That would be fun.
Yeah,
that would be cool for a campaign thing.
Yeah.
The thought that Bob was talking about is like, for instance, you're solving a case and you're like, okay, we can open up one cold case, and you're like, oh, this gun,
and you can really control. I'm sorry, keep going.
So you can be like, oh, this gun, this gun was actually used in our other, like, this gun was also used in our cold case. And now you can be like, oh, we can revive this cold case because we now know something about this gun. Yeah.
You can even design your campaign play that some cases end up going cold if you haven't played other cases.
Yeah.
Because you don't have the evidence from that case yet.
Yeah.
It'll be interesting because
that's fascinating. Like, that's a fascinating design structure for a campaign because you can really control it, because the personal stuff in police procedural things never really don't often have as much to do with the cases that are going on. Yeah. They're generally very separate. So you can actually have a fairly strong guiding hand in the adventure structure.
Yeah.
Although I do think there's going to be a move. I don't know how to work it in yet, but there's going to be the Eureka move where when you are involved in your personal life, you do something that gives you a free clue.
Suddenly you get insight into an active case
funny.
or something. That trope, wait a minute.
Because that trope is everywhere. The closer. The closer was notorious for that.
I mean, there's always been a notorious thing in a lot of those kinds of shows where like something in their personal interactions translates to something in the emotional revelation turns into the procedural action.
Yep.
Yeah, there's the closer without a doubt. There's always a moment in the closer where she'll be talking or something to like her boyfriend or like just outside of the case, and then all of a sudden she'll just stop and like leave.
Yep.
Because she's like, oh, and then like she like grabs her bag and like takes off, and then like bam, the case is broken wide open. It's awesome.
We need to make this game.
We do. Listen, I have a few, like, as you know, we're working on something right now. But as soon as I get rid of that off my plate, I can take those notes.
I'm super excited.
Then there's that other thing, that turning point thing, that Hydra Hackers thing.
Oh my god!
Then you can make the police procedural game. Oh yeah, did we mention Long Live the Queen?
I'm gonna cry.
But yeah, to go back to the topic at hand, like I tried to think of anything interesting that we may have done with clocks that hadn't really been done. But like I was thinking about Relic Hunters. The treasure pile and the relic deck, they're essentially countdown clocks.
They are.
So that's
countdown clocks.
But that's nothing new. So yeah, I think we've covered that now.
All right. Anything in the chat room before we move on to the conversation?
We have a question. One more question from Blake Ryan. Are clocks like EXP in D&D in that people will only play towards the reward?
No.
And we kind of talked about that a little bit in the chat room. And from my experience in the games that I've played, we haven't really seen it. I suppose it's possible that somebody might kind of fixate, but I don't think it's by nature something that would happen.
It's not a reward. It's more about curiosity.
For which one?
Or tension. So it was like, well, people only play to the reward of clocks, like experience points in D&D, and I don't think that's the point of a clock at all. The point of the clock isn't about a reward. The point of the clock is, I mean, there are some that are rewards, right? They're the personal clocks, but there are some that are about tension.
Yes.
They're about avoiding consequences.
Right.
They're about learning information.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, that's a kind of reward, but it's not the same kind of reward as experience points. It's not a direct character reward.
No, and I think I think what Forge in the Dark does really well is that since you're allowed to make your own research project, like you get to build the reward you want to work for.
Yeah, that too.
But you also have a problem in Forge in the Dark because you have a limited number of what you call it? You have a limited number of moves you can take in your downtime,
Mhm.
and if you get jacked, like you need to heal.
Yeah.
And if your stress is too high, like you need to decompress.
Yep.
Like you may not get to work on your thing. So
It's true.
it creates this thing where you have to start making hard decisions or pay money.
Yep. All right. Well, that's our conversation about clocks. That was really fun. I really enjoyed that. It was very loose, freewheeling, kind of like that a lot. It's very, very misdirected, Mark. I think.
Yeah.
Yes.
Hopefully, we didn't stray and mark up our clocks too many times for tangents.
Tangent clock.
The tangent clock.
When the tangent clock fills, they will go off on a tangent.
And when the tangent clock fills, the tangent twins will arrive. So let's not do that.
Easy.
Hey.
Easy. We'll never recover the show
I
again.
know, right? All right.
Conversation corner.
Yeah, well, where the heck is it? It's over here somewhere. Found it.
Bob, what the hell is this note in here? What the hell am I gonna do with this?
So like what? The first one?
Hey Bob, tell me about filling the hole.
In Minecraft, I took down a structure that was near my base that I did not want there anymore, and it ended up going down 17. Chris is doing an okay check.
I'm doing the okay check-in here. Okay,
we
Phil's
have an X on the
okay.
table. No, it's
Bob's okay. By the way, the okay check-in is when you do this thing with your fingers.
Yeah, you
and
make the okay sign, yeah.
and then everybody else can either give you the thumbs up, the thumbs down, the not so good. But everybody was good.
Yeah. So I took the structure down, and it went down below ground level about like 17 blocks, and it's like maybe 25 by 30 blocks side to side. So I have this big giant rectangular hole near my base, and then I went out and I started filling it in.
To which the rest of us on the Mumble server, and I think it started with Rich, who was like, "Dude, you could just cover over it with 2 blocks."
Rich
Rich is Victor's nephew.
Oh,
Victor's
Captain
nephew.
Richard. Okay,
Yeah, Captain
sorry.
Richard. Yeah, so he's like, you could just cover 2 blocks over the top of it. and
But then if you break through those 2 blocks by accident, you fall in a hole, and
So did you have fun filling the hole?
it's not 100% full yet, but yeah,
he's still
that's part of my brick therapy.
You're still
is just
filling the
breaking
hole?
blocks and filling things up, and it's soothing. So anyhow,
Bob,
yeah, I know. Whatever.
I love you, man. I'm not gonna
do what you got to do with
I'm
that
not
one.
gonna say the thing I was
Yeah.
gonna say. Like,
We talked about masks a little bit already.
Bob, there's these dating apps in the world. You can just swipe left, swipe right.
Swipe left, swipe right.
Although up and down is way more intuitive.
Dating is work. Anyhow, so masks.
You're not wrong.
Hookers and strippers, man. Hookers
No,
and strippers.
No, I don't need
that's
any of that either.
expensive.
Well, it is expensive, but
Yeah.
it takes care of. It gets rid of dating.
Yeah, I suppose that's true.
Anyway, just saying.
So should I continue?
By all means, please move on.
Have I derailed this? Did I fill in the tangent clock yet? Far From Home is coming.
Did we hit the after show? Sorry, I'm just. I don't know what happened.
The after show clock might have. We might have filled the
we might
after
have
show.
triggered the
Singing
after show
doot
clock.
doots? Anyways, okay.
QCC. It's too soon. Next.
Okay.
What's Far From Home? Oh, Spider-Man. Far From Home.
Spider-Man Far From
We
Home.
get our tickets. We'll
we
see
have
it on
tickets.
the 4th of July.
Yeah.
That'll be fun.
Yay.
Oh man, I went and saw Aladdin. It was really good.
Do do do
Do do do do do do.
So I am
Ain't never had a friend like me.
I'm inspired for the fact that you had nice things to say about it, because I was very wary about it, because Aladdin's my favorite Disney movie, and I was like, what could you possibly do
also
to
my-
improve upon this?
Also, my favorite Disney movie. I don't know if they improved upon it.
Right, but everything you said about it, I'm like, I am everything but one thing you said about it, I am 100% for, and then just one part of it, I was like, I could have kept that in.
Yeah, right.
It sounds like they did a fine implementation of
Yeah, Will Smith is fine as the genie. He's pretty funny. I mean, no one can be Robin Williams.
No one can be Robin Williams as a genie. Plus the animated genie. Like,
Yep, the animated genie. That is the other the other thing is a lot of the cool bits I always loved from the animated movie don't necessarily find their way into the.
Oh, I don't even know how you could do it. You can't do it. You
Well,
can't have
they
Will
did.
Smith directly be the Robin Williams genie.
I mean, he kind of was.
Yeah.
Yeah, that part they did really well. There were some big CGI type things towards the end of the film that they could have probably maybe tried to do, but they didn't. They went a different route. But I didn't even realize it was directed by Guy Ritchie.
Oh, nice.
Like it's got a bunch of that Guy Ritchie.
Well, now
flavor
it's
and
funny you
feel
say
to
that
it.
because now you say like it looked like a Bollywood thing. Like that doesn't surprise me.
No. I mean, like when I saw Guy Ritchie had directed it
Yeah, that's
at
what I'm
the
saying.
beginning, like I'm like, oh, that's interesting. And then I'm like, this is totally a Guy Ritchie movie. It feels like a Guy
That's
Ritchie
cool.
movie. It feels like a Bollywood movie too, in the best ways.
In all the best
I
ways.
also like Bollywood movies.
There is
so.
nothing wrong with Bollywood. The only thing better than Bollywood movies is Indian action movies. Have you ever watched any Indian action movies?
No, I have not.
Bonkers, man.
Yeah, they out there.
Bonkers, over the top action. Like sometimes I just watch them on like YouTube or Facebook video. I don't even understand what they're saying. Just the action on them, so over the top.
That good, huh?
Love it.
I saw Men in Black International.
Yeah, was it?
It was okay.
Yeah.
It was fun. I mean, it's fun to watch Hemsworth and Valkyrie. Her name is
Tessa
Tessa
Thompson.
Thompson. Yeah,
That's the ultimate bisexual movie, by the way.
yeah, I know, right?
Like, I mean, how could you not love both of them?
Mm-hmm.
Like,
Absolutely, and they're really good together, and that's perfectly fine. And the movie was predictable and just it was good to watch. It was entertaining.
did it have all the good Men in Black tropes?
Yeah, absolutely. They get that little character that you see in the preview,
Yeah.
the little pawn. Like that character's fun.
Yeah.
I have like a game group at work. Like we play games.
I love
at
it.
work.
Yeah.
Like what have we played? We played just last week and this week. We played the entirety of a Hero Realms campaign.
Nice.
So we played like there's a Hero Realms box set that comes with the campaign. We played all of that. We played I got them to play this game called Harbor. We played The Climbers a couple times. They really enjoyed that game. We've been playing Batman Love Letter the last couple of days.
Oh yeah, that's fun.
They like those games where they can screw each other over. Those are not necessarily my favorite games, but it's fun enough to play.
Did you have you brought him Red 7 yet?
No, I haven't brought them Red 7 yet.
I love Red
Do I
7.
own Red
Oh my
7?
god, I haven't played that in forever.
I don't
That
think I
was a
own
good
that game. That's why.
No, Red 7's like one of my favorite ones. You should now you know here's what you should do though. You should bring them for the Queen. And just be like,
Oh,
okay.
Let's play a
For the
role-playing
Queen.
game.
You'll now Bob
Let's play the story
Bob
game.
got to play for the Queen.
For the Queen is freaking brilliant.
You're gonna have to. I'm gonna need to bring it
Brilliant.
somewhere where you can
That
play.
game is so cleverly put together. And you could totally skin that a bazillion different ways.
Oh, man, that's exciting.
Yo, the skinability of that game is high.
Yeah.
I don't want to do anything about it because it's Alex's game, and
Yeah.
it's like for the time being,
Just
like
let it go.
Imagine you open up a box of cards and the first card says "Hoy Chummer,"
yeah.
and then you go into a cyberpunk thing with it. It's like
Oh god,
Like
you
you-
could do so
like
many.
just
But Alex's game is so sublime in its design that like I honestly don't want to skim it for
Yeah.
like just everybody bask in the glow of
Yes.
Alex's design first. But you could totally sneak that into work. Next thing you know, they'd all be playing Dungeon World.
I don't really sneak it into work.
No, but I'm saying like you could just be like, "Hey, I got this card game. You
Yeah,
guys
let's
want to
play a
play?"
game.
Yeah.
Right, and the next thing you know, they'd be like, "Hey, do you have any more games like this?" You'd be like, "Well, by the way,
Yeah.
I do."
I do. We are on the last half of the last month of Pandemic Season 2.
Is it tense?
Oh my.
I can't even because someday I'm going
Man,
to do this.
The last
Oh
thing
my.
the last thing they do to you, we were like, "Really? Oh shit." Like that was our reaction, like that's not easy. Like we had pretty much constructed our characters over the course of time and the board to be what we wanted it to be.
Did they just?
And then it wasn't that. It's like the last thing is like, well, we can't use any of our special abilities and things that we did to that. We have to come up with some other plans. And then we did. We were going to try to win the game in the first month of December, but it's really hard to do that because that's when we found out the thing that you're supposed to do. We made an effort, but we just couldn't do it. But we're going to give it our best the last month of December. That's me. What about you?
So I ran the Masks game. So Tony, my Rainmaker, is due. His wife's due to have a baby at the end of August.
Oh my.
So I needed to kind of put a wrap on the arc for my Masks game. So I was just doing some like single comic book kind of adventures.
Uh-huh.
But I was like, nope, I need to do an event now.
Turned it up.
So I turned it up to a ridiculously complicated
Time travel.
dimension
Yeah.
travel, like, but it all was based on the backgrounds of the characters and the history that we made for our Halcyon City. So I literally was sitting earlier this week and was like, I said to Senda, I'm like, I roughly know what I want to do with this thing. I have no idea how to get it there. And within 12 hours of like just seriously sitting and thinking about it, I hammered out the backstory plus the first adventure. And I was like, kiss my brain. Like, thank you for braining through like, and making this like crazy story about Tesla in a pocket dimension attacking the 25th century and like how it all lines up with the characters' backgrounds, and it's all over. Like it's all tight. Like it's all logical and tight. The hardest part was for the adventure that I did on Sunday. I had to do the big data dump because I led them up to a whole bunch of adventure. They did this thing, and then the Temporal Protection Agency appears and is like, "We need to remove you from this timeline right now." And so then they have to explain to them what's going on. But it's one of those cases where I had to do the big NPC, like I have to tell you a bunch of things.
Yeah.
And I hate doing it, but there was no way to do the rest of it.
It would have taken you multiple episodes.
Oh.
It would have taken you a couple of sessions to even get all that stuff out there trying to show it.
Exactly.
Tell it.
So I was like, and what I really want is for the last couple sessions of this game to be the doing part.
Yeah, I mean,
So-
when you have time constraints like that, it's okay.
Yeah, so I had to do the literal, like in the comic book, I had to do the thing where we flash back and we see panels with the narration boxes over them. Like I just did a bunch of those. So I was feeling bad. Like everybody actually really liked it. I checked in with everyone afterwards.
I read it.
But I was like, I'm like, was that okay, guys? And we played no breaks. We played right up to the end of the night, which is not the way I like to do these things, right? No denouement, no cool down. But we ran like right up to the edge of the time. And I was like, I hope it was okay. But everybody seemed to like it.
Yeah,
And
we were fine.
so now the next couple of adventures are going to be these like really kick-ass time travel things.
Very nice.
I got back into Minecraft. I hadn't played in a while post Origins. In fact, actually at Origins, a bunch of us talked about missing each other on the Mumble. So a bunch of us got onto the Mumble on Saturday night.
Oh, that's cool.
And it was great. Like Schmitty was there, and Weregator, and Rich was there, and who else? Bob, Tony popped on for a while. Like it was so much fun. Not all of us were playing Minecraft because we don't have the shared server up yet. I mean, Bob was, I was.
We were playing solos, or I was playing on the server with some people from work.
Yeah, and I was playing a solo. You could tell I was playing, and I was playing low level because I kept swearing.
Yep.
Because every time I was still in the state where monsters can kill me. So we're like, everybody's talking, and then all of a sudden you hear like, fuck, like as I'm running away from creepers and things like that. So anyway, it was, but it was, I once again am just reminded that I should just.
We're not going to have an after show.
No, this is our after show.
I mean, I have to release something.
Well, hang on. I'll stop. I'll talk about one last thing really quick. There has been a big push over the last couple of days to get the Turning Point quick start rules together because that is coming super soon. And just a hint, if you're a Patreon, might be coming a little super sooner. Super sooner.
I said a word.
Incrementally sooner, I should say, because it'll probably like a day or before everyone else. But our patrons are definitely going to get to benefit from that. But the cool part is, we get to so we're hustling, right? So Senda and I have been hustling to get the quick start written. Bob and Sean and everybody is pitching in. Chris did a big dev edit. We had some beta readers go through it. Bob and Sean are doing the editing on it. Matt,
you say big dev edit. It wasn't that much work.
Well, Matt jumped in. Matt's jumped in to do some artwork. We saw the first sketch of it. The first picture, the first sketch. I'm really excited about it.
It's really quite lovely.
I know. I can't wait to see the two pictures together. Anyway, it's coming so soon. So soon. I'm really excited because we're going to put it out there, and people are going to get to actually play 2 of the dilemmas. That's what you're going to get. This PDF is going to be print and play. You're going to be able to teach people from the text of the game how to play.
Yeah, it's really good that way too. That needed an adjustment or two, but otherwise it was.
It needed a little tweaking, and actually Todd Crapper gave us a great suggestion because we had done it one way. I'll talk about it in the after show, but Todd Crapper gave us a great suggestion and chopped 4 pages out of the manuscript.
Really?
So I had the rules section before the talkie section, but the rules section tended to repeat things that got said in the talkie section.
Did.
So all we did was switch them and put the rules under the talkie section, and then took out everything that had just been said, and we dropped 4 pages on the manuscript. It was like 20 pages when in the first iteration.
Yeah.
It was 16 when we flipped it. Senda did all that. Was all Senda.
That's different. I haven't seen that version yet.
You didn't see Quick Start Master 2?
Not. I think the only one I saw was the one where it was the rules came before the talkie parts.
Oh, then you should see. Then we didn't rewrite anything. We just literally switched the order.
It's a huge difference, though,
and it made a huge difference because it allowed us to take out so much repetition.
Okay.
Yeah. So anyway, that's coming really soon. Do the patron shout outs so we can kick over to the after show.
Patreon shout outs. Glenn Seiler, Drew Smith, Secret Open of the Show, Robert Aducci, Jeff Stevens, MT Black, The Closet Gamer, Troy Pitchelman, Robert Dorgan, David Walker, Chris Foster, the best Chris, because I'm not, Troy E. Taylor, Thomas Hook, Tim Okoye, Wayne Peterson, and Jason Pitt.
Thank you all for listening.
And being our patrons.
Yes.
If you are free, Tuesday evenings, 8 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. the Queen's Time, come join us live on Twitch, where you can chat with other listeners in the awesome hashtag chat room for life and ask us the occasional question.
You know, if you can't make it to the live show, you can check out our podcast each week wherever you get your podcasts. You can also take a listen to some of the other shows in the Misdirected Mark Network, such as Down with D&D, Bone Stone Obsidian, Pandas Talking Games, Cypher Speak with Darcy and Troy, The Gnome Cast, the Wednesday Evening Podcast All-Stars, Zhang Yu Hustle, She's a Super Geek, and Bonus Experience. You can and should also check out our sibling podcasts, Tabletop Bellhop, The Knights of the Night, and the always amazing Gaming MBS.
Can we get a bell so when you say Tabletop Bellhop, I can just...
I know, it'd be great. Right? It'd be really solid if we could do that.
After you have filled up your clocks, leave us some feedback. You can reach us directly via email at mmp@misdirectedmark.com. Hit up our Facebook group. Check us out on Twitter. The show and the network is at misdirectedmark. This guy over here to my right is Robert M. Everson. That guy over there to my left is the Light 101. And me, I'm DNA Phil.
If you like what we do here and on the other shows in the Misdirected Mark Network, you can support our Patreon campaigns, and please do.
Please do.
MMP, Down with D&D, and Pandas Talking Games are at patreon.com/MMP. She's a Super Geek is at patreon.com/SassGeek. Zhangu Hustle is at patreon.com/Zhangu Hustle. And last but certainly not least, Bonus Experience is at patreon.com/Bonus Experience. Patrons of MMP, Down with D&D, and Pandas Talking Games get access to the after show, pre-production show notes, musical parodies, the Pandas Talking Games bonus outtakes, and other special releases.
This has been a Misdirected Mark production. The Media Armor of Encoded Designs. Mic drop!
Filling up the clock, filling up the clock, filling up the clock. Clock is full. We out!